INFJs often allow people to underestimate them not because they lack self-awareness or confidence, but because they understand the value of being unseen until it's necessary to be seen. There's something deeply strategic about the INFJ's quiet power. To outsiders, this can look like weakness or timidity, but to the INFJ, it's a deliberate choice rooted in emotional intelligence, patience, and an almost spiritual understanding of human behavior. From an early age, INFJs learn that being deeply perceptive and intuitive can make others uncomfortable. They can see beneath people's words, sense emotional undercurrents, and anticipate intentions long before they are revealed. Rather than displaying this ability, they often conceal it. They know that exposing too much of their insight can make others defensive or wary. So, they choose to play along, to listen more than they speak, to ask questions instead of asserting conclusions, and to let others believe they are more naive or simple-minded than they really are. It's not deception, it's wisdom. They understand that sometimes the best way to see the truth is from the shadows. INFJs have a natural humility that makes them uncomfortable with self-promotion. They don't crave recognition in the way others do, nor do they measure their worth by how loud they can be. They prefer to let their actions speak for them, even if that means being underestimated along the way. In workplaces, social settings, or friendships, they may deliberately take on quiet roles, observing and understanding the dynamics before revealing their real strengths. This often leads others to mistake their silence for lack of capability. Yet, when the INFJ finally acts, it's usually with such precision and depth that it leaves people astonished, as if brilliance emerged from nowhere. Another reason INFJs are underestimated is because they rarely compete. They operate on an entirely different frequency, one driven by meaning, purpose, and alignment, not ego. In a world obsessed with appearances, confidence, and power displays, the INFJ's calm, introspective nature stands out as understated. They don't interrupt, they don't boast, and they don't fight for attention. Their stillness can easily be misread as insecurity, but in truth, it's restraint. They choose peace over power struggles, empathy over dominance. It's only later that people realize that the INFJ's silence wasn't ignorance, it was discernment. INFJs also have an unusual relationship with their strengths. Because they see life through a lens of ideals and moral responsibility, they downplay their gifts so as not to make others feel small. They empathize so deeply that they shrink themselves to avoid overshadowing those around them. If someone feels insecure or threatened, the INFJ will unconsciously dim their own light to create harmony. This act of emotional self-sacrifice often makes them appear less capable or assertive, even though internally they are incredibly strong and self-aware. Their goal isn't to win, it's to connect. And that sometimes means allowing others to win the surface while the INFJ holds quiet mastery beneath it. There's also a quiet confidence in being misunderstood. INFJs find power in knowing that others can't easily figure them out. They are complex, layered souls with thoughts and motives that run deep beneath calm exteriors. When others underestimate them, it gives them a sort of protective cloak. They can move unnoticed, gather information, and understand people's true intentions without drawing suspicion. Being underestimated becomes a psychological advantage. It allows them to act without pressure and strike when it truly matters. They rarely waste energy proving themselves to people who cannot see their depth. To the INFJ, authenticity matters more than validation. Yet, this tolerance for being underestimated has a cost. It can lead to feelings of invisibility or emotional isolation. When people consistently overlook their value, INFJs may begin to question whether their quiet strength is even noticed. They long to be understood, yet they fear exposure. They want to be seen, but only by those who can truly appreciate what they see. This paradox makes them both mysterious and misunderstood. The quiet achievers who uplift others while silently battling their own sense of being unseen. Despite this internal conflict, INFJs rarely change their approach. They'd rather stay true to their principles than conform to shallow displays of confidence. Their authenticity is their anchor. They understand that being underestimated isn't an insult. It's often a reflection of how deeply others fail to see beyond appearances. And because the INFJ's life philosophy is rooted in meaning, not ego, they remain unbothered by superficial judgments. They know that real power doesn't shout, it whispers. Real wisdom doesn't demand to be seen. It reveals itself at the right time. When an INFJ finally decides to reveal their true capacity, whether it's through an act of leadership, an emotional insight, a creative masterpiece, or a moment of decisive strength, the shift is undeniable. People who once dismissed them suddenly realize how much they underestimated their quiet depth. But by then, the INFJ has already moved on, uninterested in recognition. Their satisfaction comes not from shocking others, but from fulfilling their purpose quietly and authentically. INFJs let people underestimate them because they know who they are. They've learned that their power doesn't depend on how others perceive them, but on how true they remain to themselves. They see no need to fight for validation in a world that often confuses noise for strength. They understand that the greatest storms make no sound until they strike, and that sometimes the most powerful souls are the ones who never announce their presence. They simply transform the world in silence. Another reason INFJs let people underestimate them lies in their deep awareness of timing. They instinctively know that life unfolds in seasons, and that revealing too much too soon can ruin what could have flourished beautifully with patience. They are observers before they are participants. In relationships, workplaces, or creative pursuits, they prefer to study the environment and the people in it before showing their full abilities. They want to understand the motives, energies, and integrity of those around them first. To the untrained eye, this looks like hesitation or lack of confidence, but to the INFJ, it's simply wisdom in motion. They know that not everyone deserves full access to their mind or heart. By allowing others to misjudge them initially, they protect their inner world until it's safe to emerge. INFJs are also masters of emotional camouflage. Because they feel emotions so intensely, they've learned how to tone down their expressions to avoid overwhelming others. This makes them appear calm, detached, or even indifferent in situations where others might expect strong reactions. But beneath that surface lies a storm of reflection, empathy, and strategic thought. Their composure often leads others to think they are passive or easily influenced, when in truth, the INFJ is internally dissecting every word, gesture, and intention. They appear still, but they are processing at incredible depth. The underestimation happens because most people mistake quiet emotional control for emotional weakness, not realizing that restraint is one of the INFJ's greatest strengths. INFJs have a unique relationship with ambition. They are driven, but not outwardly so. They want to make an impact, but not necessarily through competition or status. Their vision is usually long-term, decades, not days, and this makes them appear slow or unambitious to people who chase immediate results. They prefer meaningful success over visible success. They don't rush to climb ladders that lead to nowhere or chase validation that fades quickly. Their subtle pace can frustrate people who can't understand their inner compass. Yet this is precisely why INFJs end up achieving deeply fulfilling things. They allow themselves to be underestimated while quietly building something powerful in silence, something others won't see until it's complete. INFJs have the gift of empathy and perspective taking. They can step into another person's shoes so naturally that they sometimes adopt roles or behaviors that make others comfortable, even if it means playing smaller than they are. If they sense that their intellect or confidence might intimidate someone, they'll soften their tone. If their insight threatens someone's ego, they'll hold back what they truly see. This self-editing is not dishonesty, it's compassion. INFJs don't want to embarrass or alienate others. They'd rather maintain peace, even at the expense of being underestimated. Over time, though, this becomes second nature, and people begin to assume that the INFJ really is as unassuming as they appear. INFJs also know that being underestimated gives them freedom. When people expect little from them, they aren't pressured to perform or conform. They can work, create, and think in their own rhythm. They can experiment without judgment and grow without external interference. This freedom is precious to them because INFJs are highly self-directed individuals who value authenticity over applause. The less attention they draw, the more room they have to evolve quietly. They would rather be the unseen force behind transformation than the face of it. This is why many INFJs thrive as writers, advisors, or visionaries. Their influence often extends far beyond what people can perceive on the surface. The INFJ's aversion to confrontation also plays a role. They don't see the point in proving themselves to people who are determined not to understand them. If someone chooses to misjudge them, they'll simply let it be. Their inner peace means more than being right. They know that truth always reveals itself in time, and when it does, it speaks louder than any argument ever could. This detachment from validation confuses others, who interpret it as weakness, when it's actually deep self-assurance. The INFJ's quiet indifference to being underestimated comes from the confidence of knowing that time always vindicates authenticity. Sometimes, INFJs even use underestimation as a way to protect their purpose. They understand that once people realize how perceptive, strategic, or visionary they truly are, those same people may try to use or manipulate them for their insight. So, they allow a certain image to exist, the calm, agreeable helper, while keeping their truest intentions guarded. It's their version of emotional encryption. Not everyone deserves access to the blueprint of their mind. By appearing less capable or less ambitious, they maintain control over what they reveal and to whom. There's also a spiritual undertone to why INFJs allow themselves to be underestimated. They believe in the power of humility and the law of sowing and reaping. They know that pride often leads to downfall, while quiet integrity leads to enduring success. They trust divine timing, sensing that life unfolds according to purpose, not perception. So they wait. They build quietly. They love deeply. They let people talk, doubt, and misjudge, because they understand that their worth doesn't need to be announced. It will eventually shine through action, not explanation. INFJs understand that being underestimated can be a gift. It separates the shallow from the sincere. It reveals who truly sees them, and who only looks at the surface. For an INFJ, that distinction is everything. They crave genuine connection, the kind that goes beyond masks and assumptions. When someone takes the time to see past their quietness, to recognize their insight and heart, that person earns a place in the INFJ's inner circle. Everyone else can remain in the fog of underestimation, because to the INFJ, not being seen by the wrong people is a blessing in disguise. The point is, INFJs allow people to underestimate them because they see no loss in it, only wisdom, freedom, and protection. They know that the loudest voice in the room isn't always the most powerful. They understand that subtle influence lasts longer than overt dominance. And they carry a quiet faith that those who truly matter will eventually see their light. Not because they shouted for attention, but because their authenticity spoke for itself.